we're back. So now the moment we've all been waiting for, we can now finally take revenge upon the coronavirus that has so turned our lives upside down. So there's a bit of a introduction here, which I won't read, you guys can read it yourselves. This has been posted in Google Classroom. And as I alluded to in my introduction previously, what we're doing is we're going to be destroying the coronavirus by poking holes in it, essentially. And so I've shown you guys how to add shapes, right? We can make larger shapes, more complex shapes by taking a simple cylinder, for instance, which can be the trunk of a tree, and we can add cones to it to make a pine tree, or we can add a sphere to it to make a deciduous tree. That's combining or adding shapes. We can also take shapes away from other shapes, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So in the real world, when we take a shape, when we subtract or cut into something, right, we use a tool. So in the case of a saw, we're cutting, right, into another shape using that tool. In the case of making a sculpture, for instance, you may use a chisel and a hammer and hammer away the rock to sort of to give you that sculpture beneath. In fact, that's what Leonardo da Vinci once said. He said the sculptures that he created, those masterful works of art, were already there. All he had to do was clear away the unwanted bits. That's basically what he said. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but that's more or less what he said. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be subtracting a shape from another. When we're finished, we should have at least 3 different holes in the model of the coronavirus. And in this case, we're not going to be adding a shape at the beginning. Technically, we will be adding a shape, but you already have a shape there to begin with. So you have to download the file, the Blender file in the assignment first. It's called coronavirus.blend. Download that to your computer. It'll probably go into your Descargas folder or your Downloads folder. Open it with Blender, and then you can follow these instructions to complete the assignment. So the first thing we have to do is we're going to make our tool with which we cut into the virus. So we're going to be using a cylinder as our tool in this case. So obviously we press Shift A to add it. We find it in Mesh, and we add the cylinder. So if we go to our Blender file here, okay, here's our ugly, sinister virus. Don't worry, it's not contagious on the computer. It won't hurt you. But anyway, we add a shape by pressing Shift A, find the cylinder under Mesh, and there it is. Now I can't see it because it's actually too small. It's inside the virus. But if I zoom in, I can see it inside the virus there. But what I'm going to do is we're gonna make this bigger, because right now it's not going to do a lot of damage to the virus. So we have to increase the size. But before we increase the size, we're going to spin the cylinder. This is what I was showing you guys in the review and preview. You do that by pressing R for rotate, right? And we're going to rotate it around the Y-axis. So we press Y and then 90 for a 90-degree turn, a quarter turn, right? So again, we press R for rotate. We rotate it along the Y-axis. That's the green axis, so it's going to spin this way. And we type in 90, hit enter. And there we have our spun cylinder. Now we're going to stretch it so that it does a little bit more damage to the virus. And again, we do that by pressing, if we're scaling something, what do we press? S, right. I think I heard you say it. We press S for scale. We're going to stretch it along the X dimension. So we press X and we will scale it by a factor of 6 and then hit enter, right? So now we should have a cylinder that's going right through the virus, which is exactly what we want. If we go back to the assignment sheet, that's what we've said. We press X for scale, X for x-axis, and 6 for the scale factor. Now, this next step is very important, so we have to make sure that we do that. Always, 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 before we cut into something, we have to select the shape that we're cutting into. So in this case, we're cutting into the coronavirus. We have to select the coronavirus first. It's easy to forget that. I know it seems simple, but we do have to remember that. So making sure right now, because again, we've just moved our tool in position, right? So the cylinder is selected. We have to now select the coronavirus because that is what we're going to be cutting into. Now, the way we cut something is we have to go to the properties window and we're going to click on the wrench icon, which is also called the modifier properties tab. So that's this thing down here. This is the properties window. This is the wrench icon, which gives us the modifier tab. Okay, so we're going to click add modifier and under the generate column, select Boolean. So we select this button right here, right? We find the generate column, which is the second column, right? And we're going to pick this one right here, Boolean, which happens to be the most fun to say. That's how I remember it, Boolean, right? There is a meaning behind Boolean. Boolean is really a variable that can be one of two values, either true or false. But you don't have to remember that. That's more of an advanced topic in computer science. It's helpful to know, but we don't need to know that. In this case, just remember it's the most fun to say Boolean, right? So we click Boolean, and that's what this little boo is short for. We can actually see the entire word if we drag this border out a little bit. So it says Boolean. The next thing we have to do is we're gonna change the operation. We have to make sure it says difference, right? Because in the same way as with numbers, if I asked you what is the difference between 9 and 5, right? That implies subtraction, right? You're subtracting 5 from 9. So the difference between 5 and 9 is 4, right? 9 subtract 5 is 4. The same thing here. We're actually taking a shape away from another shape. It's like subtraction. So difference is our operation, right? And for the object, we want to select really the only object that's available to us, which is cylinder. Now you could, if we have many shapes on the scene, we have lots of cylinders or lots of different shapes going every which way, we're not sure which shape it is, we can click this eyedropper tool and we can select a shape this way, right? But in our case, there's only one to select. We choose cylinder. After we've selected difference as our operation and our target object as the cylinder, we click apply, right? And nothing seems to change, but sometimes that can be just an illusion, because if we go up here to the outliner window and we unselect, if we click this eye icon, we unselect cylinder, bam, right? We have a hole, a nice big hole that we've just blown through our coronavirus. Doesn't that make you happy? Makes me feel a little better. Anyway, I'm not a mean person, but I don't have a lot of sympathy for a virus which has destroyed so many things in the world. But we're gonna bring that back for just a sec because we're not finished yet. We haven't quite inflicted enough damage. So we're gonna move this back and we're gonna see what we have to do next. So we've done this, we've changed our operation to difference, right? We've selected our object as cylinder, right? We've hit apply. We've taken a look by clicking on the eye icon to see that it actually worked, to see that the hole was in fact made. By the way, if the hole doesn't get made, there's a good chance that you didn't select the coronavirus first. You might have still had cylinder selected. So what you have to do in that case is undo what you've done all the way back to however far you need to go. And then you have to make sure that the coronavirus is selected. and then do your subtraction operation. So in this case, we're going to select the cylinder again, making sure that it's visible, and we're gonna actually create 2 more holes in this virus by rotating the cylinder along different orientations. So we go back, we're gonna make sure our cylinder is selected again, and we're gonna hit R for rotate. This time we want to spin it this way, right? So how are we gonna do that? What axis do we have to spin it around? If you said the Z axis, you're correct. It's almost like the Earth. The Earth spins around a pole, right, which is more or less up and down. It's a bit arbitrary, but it spins around its axis. We're gonna spin this around the Z axis, or Z if you're an American, so that it does this. And we're gonna move it around 90 degrees. So again, I'm gonna type in 90, right, making sure that it says 90 up here before I press enter, and it does. So I press enter, and now it's moved properly. Again, don't forget this, we have to select the coronavirus in order to cut it. So we select the coronavirus again, make sure that it is outlined in yellow, and we click our add modifier again. We go to the second column, which says generate. We go to the one that's most fun to say, Boolean, right? Click Boolean, and our operation should say difference because we're subtracting. We click cylinder, and we click apply, okay? Now, let's see what damage we've done. There we go. So we've got 2 big holes through our virus in 2 different directions. Okay, so we do that one more time by making sure we select the cylinder first. We press R to rotate, and this time we're rotating it this way, right? So we're rotating around the X axis, right? We're spinning it this way, which is rotating around the X axis. The X axis is our point of turning, right? So, and again, it's 90 degrees. So now it's going to go up and down. We hit enter, and it is now in position. Don't forget to click the coronavirus to make sure you select. In your case, it will be the right mouse button to select, most likely. And then we click add modifier, we go back to generate, select Boolean. It's still on difference, which is what we want. We have to select the cylinder again, and we hit apply. Now, we should have our 3rd and final hole that's gone through the virus. Now, for some reason, it doesn't show up exactly the way we expect it to. Don't worry, that's sometimes because of the order in which we cut things, but that's good enough. I think the virus is pretty much destroyed. In fact, in this case, I even see some of the protein spikes are actually have been cut as well, which is a good thing, right? That means they can't bind to our cells. So anyway, so this is, I think our mission is successful. We've destroyed this coronavirus. We can all feel better and safer, maybe sleep a little better tonight, even if it is virtual. And don't forget that we have to save our file by going to File. I would click Save As, and it's a good idea to add your name in here, just so that you don't get confused between the files, and so that I know which file is the right file that corresponds to you. So make sure that you put your name in, make sure you know where you're saving it, right? It's probably still in the same folder that you opened it from, which is presumably your downloads folder, Descargas, but click Save As, and you should be able to save it like so. The name will have changed up at the top, and then you can go and submit that in Google Classroom, which I think you know how to do. So good luck, happy virus hunting, go destroy some viruses, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.